And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing the southern part of the ice edge here continuing to thin out, especially in the heavier ice there, and retreat back to the north and pretty much ice-free now. Togiak Bay into Bristol Bay. And this pattern of diminishing ice will continue for the next few days and will actually right through the end of the month. And for the weather tonight, weakening front here keeps a band of possible light rain from the northern Bering Sea along the southwest coast into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and maybe southern Kenai Peninsula. Otherwise, mostly cloudy south central Alaska with nice conditions. Pretty quiet again over interior Alaska with diminishing light snow on the eastern Arctic coast. And fair evening and night for the southeast coast. And for tomorrow, another sunny, warm day here for the Panhandle with temperatures in the 60s and near 70. Chance of rain due to this front coming in, increasing southeast flow, pulling more moisture into south central Alaska tomorrow. And north of the Alaska Range, though, another nice day, partly to mostly sunny, and still a few flurries there for the eastern Arctic coast with that persistent weak trough. And this front produces a widespread area of light rain from Kodiak Island up across the southwestern portion of the state, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, maybe St. Lawrence Island, into Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, and another shot of gusty winds and rain into the central Aleutians as this low tracks eastward. And then on Saturday, this low tracks right up into Bristol Bay and slowly weakens, and the front weakens. But that'll push even more moisture into southern Alaska and the North Gulf Coast. Another wet day for Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula with showers following in behind. An expanding area of light snow here from the eastern Arctic coast across the North Slope Brooks Range down into the northwest interior with scattered rain and snow showers in between these two systems in the interior. Partly to mostly sunny again, highs in the 60s for the southeast coast. And for coastal water forecast here for the south coast, east winds 20 knots for the day Friday, east-northeast 15 to 20 knots on the north coast. Light variable winds over the central inside waters of the Panhandle for Lynn Canal, north 15, southeast 10 for Clarence Strait. And for the day on Saturday, south winds 10 knots for Clarence Strait, east at 10 for Stevens Passage, and a light south breeze at 10 knots for Lynn Canal. Otherwise, the south coast, west-southwest winds 10 to 15 knots. North central coast here, south to southeast at 10 to 15 knots. A little windier up on the north coast there. Out of the east, 20 to 25 knots. And for Cook Inlet, northeast winds 20 to 25 knots. Tomorrow, east winds 25 knots for Kamishak Bay, the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast. Northeast of 15 for Prince William Sound. Eastern North Gulf Coast, east winds 15 to 20 knots. And for first day of the weekend, Saturday, Cook Inlet, northeast winds 15 knots. Southeast winds 20 knots for Prince William Sound and the eastern North Gulf Coast. Here, east at 15 for the western North Gulf Coast and southeast at 20 for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay with 5-foot seas. Kodiak Island, east winds 15 to 20 knots for Friday. Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay, winds southeast 25 knots with seas running 2 to 7 feet. And for Saturday, west to southwest winds for the Alaska Peninsula at 15 to 25 knots. Bristol Bay winds down to 10 knots from the south. Kodiak Island, southwesterlies 15 to 20 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians, tomorrow, small craft advisories, southwest winds 25 to 30 knots, Adak and Atka, southwest winds 30 to 35 knots, and west-northwest winds 25 to 35 knots for the western Aleutians with seas running 13 to 20 feet. And then for Saturday, for the western Aleutians, west-northwest winds 20 to 25 knots with west winds at 30 knots for Adak and Atka, and west winds 30 knots right across Unalaska Island with the seas running anywhere from 10 to 17 feet. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, small craft advisories tomorrow for east winds at 25 knots, east 25 for the Purbloffs, east 25 also for St. Matthew Island, northeast 25, brisk wind advisories for Norton Sound, Yukon Delta coast east at 20, and St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds at 20 knots. And for the day on Saturday, northeast winds 30 knots there for Norton Sound and 25 knots out of the north for St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, here for the southwest coast, east winds 10 to 20 knots, north winds 30 knots with seas up around 10 feet for St. Matthew Island, northwest 25 with 9-foot seas for the Pribilofs. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, brisk wind advisories, northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, northeast 25 for the western Arctic coast. Central and east side here, northeast winds or east-northeast at about 15 knots. Then those winds really increase here on the east side for Saturday. East-northeast 30 knots here for actually the entire Arctic coast. Even stronger gale force winds in the forecast for the Chukchi Sea out of the north and northeast at 35 to 40 knots.